Julia, it is my 51-year anniversary of writing my first program. 51 years I have been doing this kind of stuff. My first program was on paper tape. And it took a while, before I saw key punch cards. And then finally, I got an Apple IIe. That was huge. So, it actually had a little bit of memory. And then came the discs. The pace of change has accelerated greatly. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to share a screen for a minute, then we're going to use the flip chart for a little bit. So indeed, today we are talking about the storms of change and 5 keys for thriving this year and hopefully beyond as well, because I believe the pace of change will keep going. So the first thing I really like to do is a little bit interactive, which is winds of change ahead. What do you see? Please either raise your hand and shout it out or just put it in the chat. And we will be watching the chat. Let me get it over here. What do you see in the world? Changes that you anticipate, volatility that you anticipate that could impact you and might just be in your circle of concern. In the world, in the USA, in your company's marketplace, within your own company, or yourself. Okay, thank you. Oh, these are great. Keep them rolling.
And for the purpose of the recording, Alan, it may be helpful for one of us to summarize some of the responses that are coming through on the chat.
Okay. If you could help me, Steve, go ahead and do that, if you don't mind.
I sure will. So some of the things that have come through so far, virtual workforce, generative AI, tighter budgets, couple on politics, year of politics, polarity of politics, war, couple more on AI and / AI hype, environment and climate, government budget changes. So those are a few of the ones that have come through, and AI seems to be a recurring theme.
Yeah, it will be. Okay, that's great. Thanks, everybody. By the way, we could keep going. I'm sure we could keep going. Anybody do doom scrolling? I do periodically. Cyber warfare, thank you. There's another one. And this is a bad marker. Let me get a little bit better. These are all in our circle of concern. And they actually can impact us as well. They can come out of the circle of concern into actual impacts on our projects. Today's talk is really about what we have to do. I really do believe it's more important than ever to really tackle improving our circle of control. And that is our response to all these changes that could come, or even if they're not happening, are impacting ourselves, our own inner music, impacting the people we lead, impacting the people that we do work for, that are clients or customers, etc. It's really fascinating when I get to talk to people about this, really how important these things are to people, these things in the circle of concern, and how worrisome they are about how they could impact the work they do, the projects they do, etc. Generative AI can impact all of our jobs in a positive way or in a negative way. I do know people that do editing for a living, and how how much will generative AI and things like Grammarly already and Pro Editor, etc., impact their ability to make a livelihood? These are really important things. So we really do have to get good at our circle of control and be able to reach out into our circle of influence. Now, if I had great art skills, I would also like to draw like an umbrella, because we really want to be able to protect ourselves more from the circle of concern. And I think also as leaders, we have to be able to share more umbrellas. So that's kind of what my talk is today about, is 5 key areas that I think as leaders, we really should learn how to excel at. I'm going to be working on all 5 of these. I'm already working on all 5 of these with my clients. I'm treating things just a little bit differently this year because of these things. Let me share screen again. And away we go. So here's the list of worries I came up with before. I think you hit most of the ones I have. I added a couple other, there's water shortages or looming water shortages in many places in the world, including India, including in the United States, Western states, in Arizona, New Mexico, etc. Also, both the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal have challenges that are already impacting the supply chain and could more. Extreme weather events. Now, Buffalo always gets buried in snow, but Knoxville doesn't get when's the last time Knoxville had a foot of snow?
Like
and when is the
3.
and when is the last time Ithaca didn't have any snow at all in December? So none. It was bizarre. So the things are changing there. The polarized politics we hit, geopolitics, wars. We have hit peak metal in some areas that are surprising, that impact. There's actually a worry about hitting peak sand, which is critical for actually many industries, including concrete, solar panels, etc. Supply chain, I mentioned that. Changes in workforce dynamics. That's a lot of that is from the virtual workplace, but also from the extreme politics. That is having an impact in some of the places I see. And many industries are facing the silver tsunami, or just a number of people retiring. So there is a. Who is that?
Oh, earthquake.
Yes, the wisdom gap.
Yeah.
It is happening everywhere. Go ahead, Yoshi.
Yeah. So
what are the impacts? There really is an impact to the circle of concerns growing. I find, with the people I work with, there's sometimes, from my circle of work, I find that closing contracts are sometimes a lot faster than ever. People want us ASAP, next week. And sometimes the contracts take a lot longer than ever because they're afraid of budgets. I just see this widening. It's changing the bell curve. When I work with projects, there's a higher attrition rate than there used to be. When I work with projects, the silver tsunami is very much impacting the way that work can get done. Lots of impacts to how we do our work and all this stuff. So there's a real concern here. As leaders, we must be aware of the concerns, and we really have to know that we have to take those concerns on for ourselves, but we also have to be prepared to lead. And one of the quotes that I was given getting ready for this talk was the one from Lord of the Rings. "I wish it need not happen in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not the time for them to decide. All we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given us." So essentially, we're all being faced with what Frodo was faced with, and many fictional characters are faced with, and actually people in real life. It's a call to adventure. So think about your own call to adventure. Think about the people that are impacted by this. What do they need in these times of great change? Think about the people you lead. Think about your stakeholders. When there's a lot of uncertainty, people actually do seek some structure. They do seek some certainty. They do seek purpose. And those are many of the things I'm going to talk about here today with the 5 keys for exceptional leadership. Done with the prelude. Let's get into the work. Key number 1, accept the call to adventure. This is critical. By the way, if you watch, if you've ever heard of the hero's journey, I think that was Joseph Campbell wrote that very clearly. Almost all the time, people deny the call to adventure multiple times before they're thrust into it. And I'm going to encourage you as leaders to really step into it sooner. Let me talk about the mistakes first. Mistake number 1 that I see people do is panic when there's these changes coming down the pike. For example, on projects, I see them start to change things before they need to change them. Even though there haven't been an official change request, just the senior leader said, we're considering this. People react like it was an order given. They're panicking. If anybody has other examples, feel free to chat them up. I appreciate that. And the second mistake is, which I see more often, is hiding. They deny the changes that are coming. They deny that they have to do work differently. For example, I see some projects where they're leaning on people that are going to retire within months. We're going to retire within months, sometimes weeks, to build critical design documents, to build amazing parts of the system when that knowledge is going to leave the building. What they should be doing is mentoring people, but the senior leaders and others are leaning on them to get them to do major critical work before they leave. They're not accepting the changes that are coming. So do not delay the call to adventure. That's when people are delaying the call, they're just waiting to be dragged into it. And that delay is costing themselves and their organizations and their customers. So there's 3 parts to really accepting the call to exceptional leadership, accepting the call to this adventure. First, one of the things I think leaders are really looking for, people are looking for, is the leaders to be calm in the part of change. And so as leaders, we have to really be aware that we cannot be the ones that live in denial. It's a nice, comfortable place. That looks so comfortable under that blanket on the couch. Love to stay there. But we cannot live in the luxury of that. If we want our projects to thrive, if we want our people to come with us, as leaders, we have to recognize that we ourselves have to go through the grieving cycle first. These negative changes really are tough. I've been thinking about what AI means to my own writing process, and I spent a little time denying it before I just started exploring it. How can it help me? Just an example. So we are really, as leaders, we have to be the first ones to get through the grieving cycle such that we can lead others through it. The people we lead, our stakeholders, etc. We must reach acceptance for those changes that are coming, the changes that are here, and the changes that have already been. So watch the storm fronts. This is anticipate is more important than ever. And on certain times, I think one of the things I really encourage people to do, but especially leaders, is to keep a concern log. And what I mean by that is really risks. When people say a risk log, that seems so technical. When I ask people what the risks are, I get this short list. When I ask people what they're worried about, what's in the pit of their stomach that's causing them to just wonder something, but they don't know what it is. In the back of their subconscious, I ask people to really explore those. And that's where some real gold is. Write those down. Write what you're doing about it already. Write down your ideas for a contingency plan if this thing comes true. Watch those storm fronts. Anticipate them. Prepare for the weather that could come. Any questions or comments? And feel free to just really shout them out at any time. I enjoy that. So here's the thing, the cold hard truth. When you accepted the job, whatever job you accepted, you inherited what came before. Whatever happened before, it's now your fault. Even if you're there for 1 week, it's now your fault. You must deal with what's to come as well, those things that are coming. As one of our, we teach something called the exceptional engineering experience. And one of the graduates just did a presentation where he said one of the key things he learned is that we must embrace the suck. Now that comes from the Marines, but I think it's something we can all relate to. We must embrace the suck. Because we have choices when we hit this. We can deny it, we can panic, or we can lean into the adventure. One of our other exceptional engineer cohort members just hit a really big problem. He joined a project, and everybody told him it was a great project, it was almost done, and he'd get to do new work soon thereafter. And he joined the project. Less than a week in, he found that it was a watermelon project. Everything on the outside looked green, but he got on the inside and he saw there was a huge number of quality problems, and not all the coding, the software that's supposed to be part of it was done. And he embraced this. He embraced the suck. He leaned into the adventure. He basically said, oh, this is my fault, even though I've only been there for a week. And he took the team through a deep planning exercise to come up with what was realistic and how they could get this to the finish line. And then, even though he was an individual engineer, not the team leader, he worked with the team leader and the business stakeholders to get the business stakeholders through the grieving cycle to also embrace the suck and accept the new dates and accept the great value that was going to be delivered. This is key. We must lean into the adventure. We must accept the call to adventure. And adventure is coming. Key number 2. This is always true, that we need to keep a constant focus on value. But I find as I hit more and more turbulence in the projects, this is becoming a critical skill. And it's amazing how many people do not possess this. We have to constantly work on this, and we have to help others work on this. Because mistake number 1 is I see too many leaders just lost in the weeds, lost in the woods. They're focused on granular tasks, and they're lost in that forest of detail. For example, I was talking to one CIO that was telling me about all these details that he had to get done. And I forgot what it was specifically, but I asked him what the value was. And he said, oh, the value is obvious. The value is that we're going to do a survey. And I'm like, how is a survey valuable in itself? What is it valuable for? And it took me about a half hour working with the executive to get him to see what the real value of it was, so he could talk about it better to himself and the people. He was lost in the details. He was lost in the technical thing he was going to do, not the value for it. So we really have to ensure your work has a North Star. Now, what I like about the metaphor of the North Star is, the Mariners used to go by the North Star, and it was always there. you could always tell where the north was, and you could get your bearings. You could know what direction you're going. Even if the clouds were thick, you knew the North Star was there. When the clouds cleared clear, you'd be able to find your way. So the North Star is your mission. It's a value. It's always got to be mission first, detail second. So you got to help people work on this. What is a mission for the organization? We do a lot of work with the DoD. The clarity of that is often that we have to be able to innovate what we're doing faster than the adversaries, faster than the enemy. We have to work to say, for your project, what is the value of the project? How does it contribute to the mission? How does it contribute to furthering the organization? How does it contribute to making the workforce stronger? And then with these storms of change coming, the question has to be, does the change that are coming impact the value of the mission? Does it change the mission? And almost always it does not. What it means is it's going to impact your plan. And I'm going to come back to that. Which is this: master deep planning. Deep planning really needs to be able to be very focused on the objective, the clear value of the project, but it has to go deeper. There's a few parts. First, here's a mistake. I should probably do two mistakes here. I just have one written down. We don't do planning. With so much change, planning is essentially useless. Anybody heard that before? I have too often. And what people are missing is that the value in planning is not the plan itself, but it's the organization of the people. It's getting people really focused on the mission together and what each person is contributing to that mission and how it all fits together. And when everybody owns the plan, they also own contingency. They also own alternatives. One of the things we do with exceptional difference offerings is we have, whoops, wrong slide. There we go. We help people co-create their team's playbook. And what that does, we have a very good process for this. It leads people to be able to really get clear on what the value of the project is. I was just doing this with a group last week. We brought together what was like 3 warring parties. They thought they were warring parties because they had a lot of conflicts. It turned out their conflicts is because they were lost in the details. Mike Sweeney just made me laugh. Everyone has a plan to get punched in the face. I agree with that, but you need to be focused on what your objective is. We had three groups together, and we brought them together. And what it turned out is they were having conflicts on details in the plan, but not on the overall mission, the value of the project. And we talked about what the value of the project was, what the measure of success. And we started to do a little bit of work on what each member brought to the table, what the skills they brought, and what their role was on the project. And going through that, we found out there was gaps. And we found out there was overlaps. And people were delighted to be able to work these things out. Next is there's organizational process always. Next, the team works through how are they going to use those processes? How are they going to implement them? What is the detail? And then most importantly, they come up with a rational plan that everyone believes in, everybody is committed to. Every individual that's going to work on the plan is part of that, and they come up with a commitment to achieve the value and how they're going to get there. Now the next part is the part that I'm doing more work on than ever, alternative plans that are ready. Because what's happening with a lot of these projects is the stakeholders are also, the people that fund the projects are also hitting the sea of uncertainty. They have questions in the back of their head that they can't quite articulate, but you can see the storm coming. What if the need is greatly accelerated? When do they really want the project to be done? They want it to be done now. They want it to be done 2 weeks ago. So anything in the future is a negotiation. What if that change becomes paramount? What if they need to slow the project down to deal with something else? More than ever, teams have to have realistic alternative plans prepared. I have a silly thing over here which just shows like going from Ithaca to Clyde Peeling's Reptile Land, which is a great place, hundreds of snakes. It's amazing. And here's 3 different ways to get there. And a lot of times teams do those kind of plans. But I think they also have to have the outrageous plan, which is if you had a helicopter, how long would it take to get there? If you had to go from the East Coast to the West Coast to really deliver something in person, what's the fastest way to get there? People say airplane. I'm going to say an F-35. Or I'm sure if Jeff Swab was here, he'd tell me the fastest plane there is. So, there's always ways to go faster. We have to actually invest in those plans more than ever, such that management has choices. The stakeholders have choices. Number 4, communication. Communication is always important, but again, this becomes even more vital in uncertain times. We need to change them, communicate it concisely, clearly, and really often as well. The biggest mistake is burying the message into too much detail. Does anyone in this room get not enough email, needs more email? Anyone? Raise your hands. No hands. I don't think so. We really need to communicate that the mistake is communicating that and say the changes haven't affected us. We're still doing the plan. We might just be slower, but there's no real impact. Or not communicating to all the people that need to know about the change. Blaming others. There's really just so many ways to get communication wrong, but there is a way to get it right. First off, I got to say, please give the gift of concise. The more concise email is, the more you work on getting the key message across as concisely as possible, the more likely your message will be read, will be heard, and will be understood. The more concise you can make your talk and your speech, the more likely your message would be heard and understood. So with clarity of communication, start with value. Always start with value. Be clear about the big why for the project. We need to provide these items to enable these people to do this to contribute to the overall end customer. When I'm working with FTA projects, there's one that we're working on that will really help diagnose blood faster and cheaper so people can learn what things can help them improve their life condition. We have the alternative to that we have to make sure that we can do no harm. All these things are important. And that's the big value. It's not about the centrifuge, it's about the end value. So bottom line up front is the next thing. Always bottom line up front. What is the change that's happened? How does it impact the receivers? And what, if anything, do they need to do? That should be 3 sentences. 1, 2, 3. And also be clear what is still the same, and while you note what is different. The still the same is often just the value is unchanged. We are still pursuing this. And only add necessary detail, but not extra. This is one of the big things I learned. They can ask. If they want more detail, they can ask. And you are going to keep communicating. You will add more stuff. You'll add more stuff later when you can communicate later. You don't have to tell them everything you know, just what they need to know right now. And Brad, I'm glad to hear Bluff is working for your emails. It was a big lesson I learned early on, and I love it. Let's keep it going. Let's spread the gift of concise. Let's get others to do it. Key number 5. Invest in learning. Invest in expert coaches. Big mistake. If you think training is expensive, try ignorance. There's a lot of great quotes about this. But it is amazing how many organizations I have seen cut their training budget, do not have anything formal for mentoring, do not bring in the experts. It's amazing how expensive these costs are for them. The mistake is to just work harder. The mistake is to stop reading. The mistake is to stop investing. The mistake is ignoring those that actually have perhaps been there, done that, that have expertise in process, that have expertise in your customer domain, expertise in the technical domain, expertise in the process domain, expertise in coaching, mentoring, etc. That is a mistake. Here's why. The need for speed is absolutely real. There is no customer I talk to where they think they can go on a relaxed pace. Whenever you have a person funding a project, when they really want it is before they even started it. Once they realized that they wanted the project, they wanted it before. Whenever I do a home improvement project, bringing in a carpenter or something else, it's usually because I realized, oh, we should have done this months ago. It was never, hardly ever, to look ahead and say, oh, we're going to need this later. So you got to focus on that. Why is that important? The value. Nobody has competitors that are sleeping. Everybody has multiple competitors, multiple needs, multiple customers. The value, the need for the value is real. The need for speed is real. That is where the pressure comes from. So that is real. Keep this in mind. And things change fast. Invest to get results. How often have you seen an Olympic athlete stand on the medal stand without a coach standing somewhere in the background? You know, I can only think of 2 people I know of that have made it to the Olympic medal stand without a coach. And I followed the Olympics pretty rigorously for, well, 51 years, actually more than 51. I remember watching them when I was 8. So the key is, these people are the best in the world and they invest in a coach. They invest in experts. And that's what I find true for all the world-class organizations, all the world-class leaders. Behind them, you often in the distant dark, they keep them secret. There's coaches, there's experts. They have a circle of support. You should also invest in yourself as a leader, invest in your team, benefit from those results. We just had graduation sessions. One of our customers has invested in what we call the exceptional engineering experience. And each of the graduates was able to stand up and say what the benefits they got from the training was. And it's not that we're so great as experts. I like to think we are, but they took what we learned and they applied it. The hardest thing you do in any training is to take it and apply it. And these people did the hard work. We gave them the tools, but they did the hard work. One person was able to save over a program month off from a project. And this involves over 100 people. So for a minimal investment, they saved 100 people months of time with just one of the actions he took. One of the other people is working on what we call learn from defects. And I see Brad clapping, he's teaching this as well. Learn from defects. It's amazing if you take the defects that get out and start to study them, how you can prevent them. Another person looked at what was happening in the requirement cycle and see that over 50% of the requirements were being rejected. And he looked and learned from those defects and did multiple iterations where the next it took him 3 iterations, but it kept going down the number of rejected requirements. Now the requirements are flawless going on to the next stage. The process is not only faster up front, it improved the speed of getting requirements, but it also increased the fidelity of requirements and vastly reduced the downstream rework. Invest and get great results. You need to put the 2 together, track them. This is critical.